Unsure about this party. What are we celebrating?
He learned compression and proper ducking.
What?
And now he can make fat jams. Yeah, it's true.
Welcome back, kids. Ducking is on the menu, so let's get to it. Okay, so what I need you to do is just chill out and listen real good. You want to listen for the synth being compressed every time that kick drum hits. No compressor. Now back on. Hear it? Thumpy, right? Turning it off. Bringing it back. Thumpy goodness, right? For all the busy kids looking for quick answers, I'm gonna whip through a setup really fast right now. And that may be all you need to go get about your own ducking endeavors. If you want to hear a deeper demonstration and hear how I approach a compressor for ducking, hang out for part 2. I think the visual parts of that will be super helpful to you if these concepts are new. Alright, let's get right to it. I am soloing these 2 tracks up here. The first is a battery 4 VST from Native Instruments providing the kick drum. Have yours ready to go, and make sure that you name it something that you can easily recognize. We're going to need that in a second. The second track is a raunchy synth bass coming from Dune 3. The goal is, whenever the kick hits, using sidechaining, our compressors turned on, squashing the synth bass signal to make room for our kick drum, which not only stops all the low frequencies from mashing into a mess, but with some finesse also creates a wonderful pumping that brings energy to a mix. Let's do a quick setup. I go to my Duck Popcorn bass here, click over here in the effect area, type in comp, go down to your Steinberg compressor here. Right here, click this guy, activate, deactivate sidechaining, turns on sidechaining, click this, add sidechain source. Find the source that you named well and use that. There's my battery 4 kick drum. Now that's our sidechaining is completely set up right there. That's all we had to do. You can see the bass is thumping right here. This shows you how hard the compressor's working. Turn on this button for soft knee. For ratio, I would start with it cranked and dial it in from there. On this compressor, if we click the high button, we get a 20:1 ratio and it grays out and ignores the ratio knob. Let's do that. Attack, you want to leave this as low as you can. Hold, you want to keep that about 320 milliseconds or so. You know, you have to play with this for whatever you're doing. Okay, your release. For what I'm doing here, probably around 170 milliseconds. Pull your analysis all the way down to peak. Peak is supposedly better for catching bass drum transients. You want to shut off this auto makeup gain down here, and then you want to mess with your makeup after that. The makeup gain is simply to make up for the gain reduction caused by the compression, although you may get interesting sounds by pushing it a little too hard. The threshold, remember, sets the level the volume has to be to activate the compressor. Just listen closely as you dial this in. This is once again about your own taste. This is a good start though. Make sure you tweak like mad. Every situation is different, and the more you play, the more you understand what your gear can do. If you'd like to know more about it, stay tuned and we'll go a little further. And if that's all you needed to make some fatty jams, well, go ahead and do it and send us some links in the comments. In this next segment, we're going to use the Fabfilter Pro C2 compressor to try to demonstrate how the compressor's controls work together, and we'll listen to some values as we dial through them in context. I'll only be focusing on the things that are common across most compressors. What I'd like you to try to do here is really try to watch the graph and listen to the sound and watch the changes I'm making and the changes they make to the sound and the graph. I know so much. The threshold is the signal level that needs to be hit for the compressor to turn on. If you have sidechain set up, that is the signal the compressor will watch for the threshold to be exceeded. Otherwise, it will just watch the main signal itself. Until the threshold is reached, the compressor is doing nothing but watching the signal. That's it full on. That's threshold completely at 0 dB. It's doing nothing right now, or next to nothing. So I'm bringing it down. You hear it and see it and feel it.
Makes me want to move my butt, it does.
Yoda knows ducking. Next is ratio, how much we're squishing the signal. 1 to 1 means we aren't compressing it at all. The ratio determines how much gain reduction is applied. The ratio of 3 to 1 makes the signal raised by 1 dB for every 3 dBs the signal is beyond the threshold. 4 to 1 would raise by 1 as well for every 4 dBs the signal is beyond the threshold. Ratio causes a lot of confusion, so don't give yourself grief if it takes a few passes to own this. This is a preference thing, how much you want to give this. It's artistic, man. And the next thing is knee. Knee sometimes will show up on a compressor as a toggle button, on and off, hard and soft, right? But this one is a little slidey-do, so you can see the change in it. It gives you a continuum here. This is hard knee, see? Hard angle right there. And then let's just gradually take it over to a hard knee. A soft knee will gradually bring on the compression, whereas a hard knee will instantly turn it on when the threshold is reached. You hear it? It's subtle. It's not huge. It's right about there. That's what I'm thinking. Attack is how fast the compressor's jumping on a problem. When that threshold is hit, it will decide then, should I attack now or should I attack later, by how you set this. It's at 0.005 milliseconds now, so it's basically nothing. It's just jumping right on it. But as I move this forward, you'll see it change the sound. There was a little clicky thing I was doing earlier, and I was able to knock it out real easy just by pushing the attack forward a little bit. Just letting that transient get through a little bit first. So release is after the hold time has happened. Now it's going to let go, and when the compressor lets go, does it completely let go or does it gradually let go? So if your release is fast, it's just going to let go really quick. As we increase it, you'll be able to see this on the graph really easy. The oscilloscope, what do they call that thing up there? The display, I guess that's what it says there, that's what we'll call it. This is just a matter of how it sounds, how you like it. And it's going to change in every application, that's what all these knobs are here for. So I use the Fabfilter Pro C2 just to demonstrate to you the visuals of this, so you could kind of have a better idea of what's happening, but you don't need the Pro C2. The Steinberg compressor works fine. Now you can hear it without the kick getting in the way. Very clear what it's doing now, right? If you haven't had enough ducking yet, there's a ducking part 2. And it's not really a part 2, it's really more of an addendum. See, I did this video twice, and the one you just saw just had a better tempo, but the other one still had useful info that didn't make it into this one, and we were like, what do we do with all this? So we just stuck it at the end of this video. If you don't want to watch it, just jump it, no harm done, but the redundancy may help you take in some of the info. Super special thanks to all our friends and supporters, everyone who helps us, thank you so much. An extra special thanks to the Beehive Ashram, our newest Patreon supporter. This is for you guys.
The beehive ashram buzz.
Yeah, that's right. I had to use a clip from We Bare Bears. What would you use for Beehive Ashram? I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and much love to you. Okay, guys, here's the extra material. The video proper is complete, but these are basically the cut scenes. But the cut scene was all one video. So the redundancy might help you a little bit. I hope you enjoy it. What we have here is a mix of the song that you heard coming in with the main three things that we're dealing with are right here. The kick drum and these two synths that are providing bass. This is one called Degraders. It's a patch on the Dune 3.5 synth, as you know, one of my favorites in the world. And then we have another synth bass here, which provides a more solid volume throughout, for the most part, so that you can hear what the ducking is doing a little better. Back to the original bass. Here's the deal. This is what we're trying to do. We're going to take the bass signal and we're going to compress it a little, but we're only going to compress it when the kick drum hits. This is important because we don't want to just squash the signal of the bass the whole entire time, and we don't want to just lower its volume in the mix, which is always the quick answer, right? We want it to have that volume it has. We just don't want it to fight with the kick drum when the kick drum kicks, turning both the kick and the bass kind of into a muddled mess, right? So we're going to try to do away with that and just kind of duck out the bass when the kick drum hits. Now, how do we do this? We do this with sidechain compression. This vernacular can be so confusing. It's used a bunch of different ways, but when they talk about the sidechain is the signal that's coming in to your compressor that is going to control how the compressor works. The sidechain is that thing that's entering. So in this case, the kick drum is in the sidechain. So just think of it as another signal. You have the signal coming into the compressor from whatever it is that you're compressing, right? In this case, it's going to be that degraders patch, this bass sound right here. So we don't want it to sound like that all the time. We want it to kind of duck out when the kick drum comes in. The first thing you need to do is go to the track that you want to squash a little and click this E right here. That's edit channel settings. So here I have two compressors set up. I have the stock compressor that comes with Cubase, which is more than adequate. And I also have the Pro C2, which is the Fabfilter version. But they have some different things going on. So let's just try taking a look at this with this compressor first. So to add this here, if you're coming in a clean state, you've got your bass track set up, and then you come here and just click any one of these and bring up this effect plugin menu. And from here, you want to select your compressor. You can just type in here is the easiest way to deal with this, the beginnings of compressor, and then see all the compressors on your system. Most likely, you will have this compressor right here if you're playing in Cubase. So go ahead and click that. It's going to come up with this. The first thing I want you to do is click this button right here. This is the activate, deactivate sidechaining. When it's orange, that means that your sidechaining is now activated. So this means that this is no longer using the signal to control the compressor, but using this other signal that you will pick here in this setup sidechain routing. Inside of here, you will see nothing. It will be empty. You will hit add sidechain source, and then you will find the source of your kick drum and you will select that. For now, you can leave this level at 0 and see how things go. The other thing you want to pay attention to is this pre-post fader. If it's pre-fader, the sound will be supplied to your sidechain regardless of where you have the fader set, and it will be a consistent volume. But if you make it post-fader, what's going to happen is that wherever you've set the fader to, it will then use that output volume to send to your sidechain. Make sense? Hope so. Once we have that set up, you just need to do a few things in here to get things going. Okay, before we go any further, let's just go ahead and play this thing. Make sure your compressor is on. Once it's on, you will see right here, will show you how hard the compressor is working. The deeper that thing dips, the harder it's working. You could change this by the threshold, push it up, you'll see it's not working at all, and our signal is 1-to-1 from the input to the output. Shut off your makeup gain in the beginning, and shut off your dry mix as well. They should both be 0. We don't want any dry mix, we want pure wet mix. Wet mix is compressed, right? Dry is just pushing the signal through the same way it came in. We don't want that at all. We want the compressed mix. That's why we want 0% dry, right? The makeup, we want to keep this flat for now. This is just for after your signal is compressed. Sometimes you've really lost a lot of volume and you've got to bring it up again to be a reasonable signal level. And that's what the makeup gain is used for. We don't need that right now. This button should be off as well. The analysis should be pushed over all the way to peak for now, for this particular application. There are 2 ways of analyzing the signal to decide when to turn on the compressor. One is using the peak, and that's what we're looking for. That's why I'm cut all the way to left here and 0% and on the peak side. If it's on RMS, basically it's going to decide where to open up by an averaging of, I think it's 300 milliseconds, and using that as its determiner of whether it should open the compressor or not, or run the compressor or not. Then we just have ratio. On the Cubase compressor, you can set anywhere from 1-to-1 all the way up to 8-to-1. But the trick here is if you hit this high button, it will lock it in at 20-to-1. So we're going to use that in our instance here because we want to crank the ratio as high as possible for this application. This is hard and soft knee. Hard knee is with it off, soft knee is with it on. With the hard knee, it's not going to transition, it's just going to go right to where it needs to go with the compression. The attack is how fast, once the threshold level has been reached, that we go ahead and apply compression. In this case, we want to put this as low as possible because when the transient hits is when we want the compressor to go. We don't want it to wait. So push this down as far as your compressor will go. You can play with this. Sometimes there is a reason to put the attack so it happens somewhat after the transient, to let that thing go at full volume and then compress afterwards. There's a lot of usages here. We'll talk about that in another video. For now, let's just keep it all the way down. The hold is how long you want it to hold the compressor on once it's been triggered. We want that to be really low as well because we just want it to release naturally and fast because we're just doing it for the duration of the kick drum, right? The release is how much time it takes to get back to your uncompressed signal once your hold is over. We want to keep this around 40 to 50 milliseconds for this application, but please do play with this plenty once you get the gist of what's going on here. So that's it. With all those tools, you'll be able to figure out where you need to put the stuff to get a thumping effect. Everything I have going on right here is pretty solid. You can hear how much of that bass it's cutting out. That's the normal. Hear it? Cool, right? It really gives it a nice thump. But you can play with this all day. I've got a few different settings in here that I use sometimes. This pumping 1, it really drives this compressor really hard. You can hear it distorting at the end. This pumping 2. And if you like any of these settings, just copy them. And there's pumping 3. I always throw one of these on to get the basics where I need it to be, and then I'll play with it afterwards to dial in exactly where it needs to be. So that really is. Those are all the ins and outs of sidechain ducking with the Cubase compressor. You can slot in other compressors here. Like for instance here, I put the Pro C2 from Fabfilter. So you can see what's happening here. This ratio goes even higher than the other compressor. This one goes all the way to 100 to 1. I don't know how much of that you're gonna hear, but and then our threshold right here. See it moving? Both the attack and the release are pretty quick. Anyway, I think you get the picture here. Let's now check it out. There's both compressors. You'll see it very often that people think sometimes it's better to do 2 different compressors, each a little bit, if you really need to compress the heck out of something. 2, you get a little tonal character from each of the compressors, depending on which ones you use. You know, we'll decide whether that's desirable or not. But you know, compounding these things, using them in series is not bad. It's done often. So don't be afraid to experiment. That's really the main thing. Does it sound good? That's the only thing you really need to know. Does it sound good? One last thing before we go, let's just kill this bass line. And just one more time, let's listen to it over here. This is another Dune 3.5 bass line. I made this one. It's called Duck Popcorn. You can hear it playing solidly through this, and that's going to help us hear a little bit better what we're trying to do here. So here's the Cubase compressor doing its thing. Hear it? Let's see where we have that set. I don't know why it's at RMS. Pull that back to peak. Okay, so let's hear this one with the Pro C2 on it. Without it? With it? You gotta feel that a little bit, even if you're using terrible headphones. Alright. Well, you get the picture, kids. I hope the redundant addendum helped you just a little bit. And I'll see you in the next one. Much love to you guys.